Let's begin our journey in a world that's, well, it's shrouded in a thick, shifting fog. This is the Valley of Probability. Out here, the future isn't some clear path you can see for miles. It's a horizon that's completely obscured by endless uncertainty. Now, most people try to get through this mist by making a single guess, an average forecast. They light one little torch and hold it up against an ocean of shadow. But that's a gamble, a bet that honestly just invites ruin. Today, we're not going to be gamblers. We're going to be architects. We are going to learn how to build the light that pierces the fog. You see, every one of those single-point projections, every forecast that gives you one clean number for what's going to happen next quarter, it's just a denial of this fog. It's a fragile assumption in a world that is anything but static. This strategy isn't just flawed, it's fundamentally broken. It's kind of like trying to navigate a vast, churning ocean by just looking at a single unmoving photograph of the water. The reality is this sprawling cloud of possibilities. And to survive out here, let alone thrive, we have to learn to map that entire cloud, not just one single drop inside of it. And that is our purpose here. The architect of chaos doesn't place a single bet. No way. Instead, they build a tool, like a great lighthouse to light up the entire valley. And that tool is called a Monte Carlo Simulation. Now, this is not some crystal ball that predicts the one true future. It's actually something way more powerful. It's a map of all the possible futures. It's what transforms that paralyzing uncertainty into a real, calculated plan. It's how we move from just guessing to actually knowing. Now, this reveals a fundamental law of this valley. If you want to map the future, you first have to consult the past. All of your historical data, the collected truths of everything that's already happened, we call that X. Our goal is to use the patterns hidden inside that data to generate thousands of phantoms, thousands of little echoes of what could happen. And each one of those echoes, each single possible future is its own law. We call it an X dash, simulated realization. This right here is the very heart of the simulation, creating a whole army of these possible futures so we can understand how they behave together and see the full range of what's waiting for us up ahead. So our journey really begins here, by facing the past. Before we can generate even one simulated future, we have to give history some structure. We've got to organize all those scattered fragments of what has been into a map that actually makes sense. And that's the first great task of the architect, to inscribe the patterns of history onto a foundation that we can actually read. So I want you to imagine discovering this ancient stone altar, and its surface is just covered in the raw etchings of history. Every customer that ever arrived, the size of every household, every sale that was ever made. Just chaos. The process of taking all those raw fragments and organizing them into a structured, usable format, well, that's what we call creating frequency bins. We are literally taking the chaos of the past and carving order into it, getting it ready to finally speak to us about the future. And this is what you get. The stone altar is now inscribed with this glowing monolithic table. This is the Cumulative Relative Frequency, or CRF, table. Okay, let's break down this ancient map. The first column shows the outcome, in this case, the number of children. The second one shows its historical probability. So 38.1% of households had 0 children. But it's this final, crucial column, the CumRF, that creates a series of ranges. See how it adds up the probabilities as it goes down? The range for 0 children goes from 0 all the way up to 0.381. Then, the range for 1 child picks up right where that one left off, from 0.381 up to 0.667. Each outcome now has its very own designated landing zone, and altogether, they map the entire spectrum from 0 to 1. The altar is finally ready. So, the map of the past is inscribed. But, an inscription is pretty useless if you don't have a way to read it. To consult this altar and bring a possible future to life, the architect needs a very special tool, a force drawn from the very fabric of this valley, something to awaken the stone and receive its wisdom. And the tool the architect summons is the RAND function. I want you to think of it as the magic die of this world. It is the engine that drives this entire simulation. Every single time this die is cast, it gives us a key, a specific coordinate that we can then use to find our location on that map of the past we just created. Now this magic die, it operates under another fundamental law of the valley, the uniform distribution. All that means is that when you roll the die, any decimal value between 0 and 1 has an exactly equal chance of showing up. It's perfectly, totally fair. But here's where the magic happens. While the die itself is fair, the structure of our altar is not. Remember those landing zones we just made? Outcomes with a higher probability, like 0 children, well, they take up a much bigger slice of that 0 to 1 range. So when our fair die is rolled, it's just naturally more likely to land in one of those larger zones. And that is how the simulation honors the weight of history. And so, the die is cast. It tumbles through the ether and lands with a decisive thud, 0.556. This is our key. This is the random coordinate. Now, we have to take this number back to the stone altar and use its inscriptions to figure out what it means, to find out which possible future we just brought to life. But as we approach the altar with our number in hand, a sense of unease starts to creep in. There's a flicker in those glowing inscriptions. The architect, in their careful study, discovers that this ancient altar, well, it can be treacherous. Its logic can be flawed. There's a subtle deception hidden in its code that can lead us astray, creating a mirage that looks just like the truth, but is actually a very dangerous lie. The die landed true. 0.556 is an honest roll. We take it to our CRF table, and if you look at the ranges, 0.556 clearly falls between 0.381 and 0.667. That means it should correspond to the outcome 1 child, and yet the altar returns an answer of 0 children. It's lying to us. Why? And this isn't just some trivial error. In a simulation for, say, hospital beds or for budget allocations, this single off-by-1 error, repeated thousands of times, can lead to complete systemic failure. We have to understand where this deception is coming from. And here it is, the deception laid bare. The die's roll points to one truth, but the altar's flawed logic is giving us a lie. The system has failed. The simulation is producing this warped version of reality, and for us to become true architects, we've got to diagnose the flaw in the machine itself.
And here's the culprit. The deception isn't in the altar's stone. It's in the tool we're using to read it. The standard lookup function is, by its very nature, a floor seeker. It has this simple, rigid role. When you give it a number, it scans down the list, and it stops at the largest value that is less than or equal to your number. So when we ask it to find 0.556, it scans down, it sees 0.381, then it sees 0.667. Uh-oh, that's too high. So it goes back to the floor it just passed, 0.381, and it gives us the result that matches that, 0 children. It has walked right into the off-by-1 trap.
But the architect does not despair. They don't smash the altar. Armed with this new understanding, they can master its hidden rules. They've discovered 2 ancient techniques, 2 powerful corrections that can remaster the altar's flawed logic, forcing it to speak the truth and dispelling that mirage for good. All right, let's look at the 2 paths to truth. The first one is called the selection shift. Now this method, it alters the architect's command, not the stone itself. You tell the lookup function to get its results from a range that is shifted down by 1 row. It's basically like telling it, hey, whatever landing zone you find, give me the outcome from the zone below it. It's a clever misalignment that forces the right answer. The second path is the data shift. This method changes the ancient stone. You physically add a new row at the very top of the table, a new row where the cumulative frequency starts at 0.000. This gives a true floor for our floor seeker, making sure it never makes that off-by-1 mistake again. So one path changes the command, the other changes the code. Both lead to the truth. Now, while these 2 paths fix the altar for our current tool, the architect knows other tools exist, and each one has its own ancient laws. Some people prefer a function called VLOOKUP, but you have to know this tool has its own rigid, unbending law. It only looks from left to right. It can only search the very first column of a table. So to use this tool, the architect has to perform a ritual known as the swap of columns. That cumulative relative frequency column must be physically moved to become the far left column of the altar. This is a critical warning. You have to know the laws of the tools you command. And so our journey through the valley has brought us to this whole new level of understanding. We started out lost in a fog of uncertainty, and now we've actually mapped it using the light of simulation. We faced the altar of history, and we learned to read its inscriptions. We summoned the magic die and learned how to control its power. And most importantly, when we found that dangerous mirage in the altar's logic, we didn't run. We learned its nature and we corrected it. We have become true architects, and now the future can finally be simulated with confidence. We're going to leave the valley of probability with this one last question, a challenge for you to carry back into your own world. Take a look at the plans you make, the strategies you come up with. Are they based on a single, fragile guess? Are you just holding up a lone torch against the shadows, hoping the wind doesn't change? Or are you an architect? Are you out there gathering the fragments of your own history, inscribing your own altar and building the light that is powerful enough to pierce the fog?